Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Wednesday, June 30th. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. The Minnesota game is in 64 days. The game against Michigan in exactly 150 days. In addition to those countdowns, we're also now just over 3 weeks away from the start of Big Ten Media Days. Those are July 22nd and 23rd, which means we are suddenly very, very close to the start of the ramp up to the season. Apparently, a month filled with camps and visits and commitments makes the offseason fly by. We should do that every year. Maybe not. That was a pretty long month. Anyway. With the start of fall camp something a lot closer than you might think, I wanted to have on Buckeye Scoop beat reporter Tony Gerdeman. He's working on a series right now on the best positional units in the Big Ten. So which schools in the East Division have the best quarterbacks, which schools in the West Division have the best running backs. You get the picture. Because it's a ranking from top to bottom, it is a great chance for every Big Ten fan base to get angry with him. So, Tony, how much hate mail have you actually gotten so far?
Oh, people like me, Tom. I've never gotten any type of angry responses about anything. I think I lay things out pretty clearly, and even if a fan reads something they don't like, by the time they're done reading it and they've digested it, they're pretty convinced that I'm correct. So, quite a bit.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm getting a little concerned as you're talking that I might have forgotten to put a stamp on the letter. I don't know. You've done the quarterbacks and the running backs so far. Let's start with the quarterbacks in the East Division. That's a spot where, how you rank them kind of depends on how much weight you put on potential as opposed to returning production. You have Indiana at the top of the list. What made you decide to go with the Hoosiers?
It's Michael Penix and it's Jack Tuttle, the experience there. We've seen what Penix is capable of doing. He's not the most accurate guy. He's not the most mobile guy. He's injured quite a bit. But yet when he's out there, he makes things happen. He's just a difference maker. Jack Tuttle, I believe, started and won at Wisconsin last year. And, he's a guy that Ryan Day looked at, and Ohio State was recruiting him for a while. So they've got two good guys they can win with. And the reason I went with them over Ohio State is because Ohio State doesn't have anybody who's thrown a pass. Now, if you ask me to rank them in October, then I absolutely believe the all Big Ten quarterback is going to come from Ohio State this year. That's just something, that's what happens every year. And Ohio State has recruited very good quarterbacks. So I do believe Ohio State will eventually be there by the end of the season. But this being, without seeing them, I couldn't do it. And this has been similar to in the past where Ryan Day's first year in 2019, I had to rank him behind a number of coaches because there's, 3 games isn't enough.
Yeah, and I mean, you go back to 2019 and some of our preseason shows, we're talking about Justin Fields, and he didn't look great in the spring game. It was okay, and we saw the arm strength, and the accuracy was a little bit of a question, but how much of that is drop passes from wide receivers, and you're kind of grading guys as incompletes coming out of when it's really the first time you've seen them doing this in a real situation. You knew what you had with Justin Fields to a certain degree, but you didn't know whether it was going to be the B-, B+, B+, A-, A+ Justin Fields. Ohio State got the A+ Justin Fields that fall. It is quite possible they get the A+ CJ Stroud or whoever this fall. But, you did have Ohio State second. As you said before, no one on campus at Ohio State has thrown a pass in college yet. That is fairly significant. I got my Phil Steele this week. He had them ranked as the 31st quarterback unit in the nation. That's presumably why. I'll try and have Phil on in the next week or so on the Morning Scoop to ask that question directly. But, this is also, without having thrown a pass in college, this is also an immensely talented group, which is also presumably why Phil Steele had CJ Stroud ranked as a borderline Heisman finalist. He had him ranked number 7 in the nation. So, you're kind of trying to split the baby there. Are you kind of doing the same thing there? Just sort of like, well, this probably isn't the second best. It's either going to be the first best or the fourth best. Is that kind of where you ended up there?
Well, I think it's also because of the lack of outstanding quarterbacks in the division as well. If Penn State was bringing back Trace McSorley, then, they would be up there. Or if, whomever was bringing back, if there's more talent returning, maybe that drops Ohio State down. Although I don't think it impacts the Ohio State potential at all. And I would still expect them probably to finish at the top. But I think there's a clear distinction in the talent. And I think also we haven't seen Ohio State's quarterbacks fail yet. And we've seen everybody else behind them on this list fail and have the quarterback coaches fail and programs fail. So we haven't seen that failing yet from Ryan Day or Corey Dennis. And so they get that boost as well. And it's really their only fault is they haven't thrown any passes, which means they haven't thrown any interceptions either.
Perfect. A perfect quarterback rating so far. You mentioned, other teams do have quarterbacks back, but you've seen them fail third and fourth for Penn State and Michigan, respectively. It feels like we kind of know what Sean Clifford is and isn't at Penn State at this point. And, Michigan's quarterback position is probably a little less settled where, maybe there's ultimately a higher ceiling if JJ McCarthy, true freshman, turns out to be the real deal and wins the starting job, but it's Cade McNamara probably right now. But you also have Alan Bowman, the Texas Tech transfer. I mean, how did you end up sorting out those two where you've got the higher ceiling probably with McCarthy, but, on average, is Sean Clifford better than the average of those three quarterbacks? Like, how did you end up ranking those two?
Well, I went with, as you said, Penn State number 3. I think Sean Clifford gets back to his redshirt sophomore year where he was pretty good, 2,600 yards passing, 23 touchdowns, a mobile guy. And now you add in Mike Yurcich as the offensive coordinator, I think will help. And so really it was those two, the combination of those two things, plus Michigan, as you said, probably Cade McNamara to start. I don't know if anybody expects him to keep the job, which is not exactly a great situation to be in when you have JJ McCarthy, the 5-star guy who people think will eventually do it, and he had a chance in the spring, but he couldn't. I still think Alan Bowman from Texas Tech probably comes in and starts more than anybody, which may be a good thing for them because, as we know, the longer a quarterback is with Jim Harbaugh, the worse they get. Alan Bowman being the guy that has not been around him long at all, there won't be the downfall. And really, that's a lot of why I have Michigan ranked below Penn State. Michigan has more options. They have more talent at quarterback than Penn State. But they did last year, too, and they have before. And Jim Harbaugh has a way of getting just the least amount out of his quarterbacks. And so I'm not going to expect him to get the most out. That's why I think Alan Bowman is probably the best option because he's been coached by other guys.
The Jake Rudock paradox, where
exactly
brand new to campus, and you would normally think, oh, this is a bad thing. Like, well, maybe he's just fresher than the other guys. At running back, unsurprisingly, I mean, this is another room. This is a little like the Michigan quarterback room, where there's a guy who's the presumptive starter, and everyone's like, well, certainly he won't start the whole year. The Ohio State room, I mean, it's loaded with high 4 and 5-star talent. I mean, you've got him at the top of the heap. Master Teague, Mayan Williams, Travion Henderson, Marcus Crowley, Steele Chambers, Evan Pryor. I mean, that is a loaded room. Did you get any pushback on having them number 1?
I have not, because it just came out yesterday. So, we'll give it some time. But I don't know that there could be pushback, although I guess maybe Penn State fans might, Michigan fans might. But there's just so many different things with the Ohio State running backs. Whatever you want, the Buckeyes have. And now maybe is it if you've got 6 running backs, you don't have 1? I don't think so, because any of the 6 are still pretty good. And Master Teague was a 3rd-team All-Big Ten running back last year. So just because he may not be Travion Henderson, what Travion Henderson will become, doesn't mean he's better than, say, Hassan Haskins at Michigan or Keziah Holmes at Penn State. I think there's some comparable things there. But then you add in the Mayan Williams and just the Evan Pryor and the Steele Chambers and the Marcus Crowley, where I think all of these guys are 1,000-yard rushers with 200 carries. And so when you've got that many, and I do believe there's some difference makers in there as well, and some dynamic playmakers and some home run hitters. And that's why I think they are easily the number 1. And then you can have an argument for number 2. But I don't know that there's, for me, and I assume for Phil as well, and Athlon and Lindy's, they all do these. I don't know that anybody could have any other team than Ohio State number 1 in the East.
Well, you mentioned an argument for number 2, and I had a little bit of a question about your number 2, because you have Michigan 2, Penn State 3. And I was a little surprised to see the Wolverines rank ahead of Penn State. Noah Cain seems like he might be the best back between those two teams, but he was hurt last year. He missed the Ohio State game last year, missed most of the season. Zach Charbonnet is gone from Michigan. Hassan Haskins is back. He was good last year. Blake Corum is back. He was, young and promising, and everyone was excited, and they didn't do a whole heck of a lot. Donovan Edwards is the new shiny true freshman. Ranked very highly, looked very promising as a prospect, might be really good. Was it a depth decision to put Michigan ahead of Penn State? Was it a Donovan Edwards ceiling might be higher than Noah Cain's ceiling? What's the decision there?
Well, it's interesting because after I do these and I get them set, I look to see how other people had them, and I think everybody else had Penn State ahead of Michigan. And there's a couple reasons why I went with Michigan ahead of Penn State. One, all of these guys for Penn State, they're like the star rankings are out the wazoo. They're all very talented, but they have done nothing against the top teams in the nation, the ranked teams. Noah Cain did a couple of years ago, had like 100 yards rushing against Iowa, and he is probably the best of the bunch. But when you've got this large number of guys that you also want to get involved, will that take away from Noah Cain's impact? And I guess I'm assuming that Keziah Holmes, Devin Ford, Kevon Lee, that's who they are, even though it's probably not fair. They are more talented than the 3 yards per carry they were last year, but hey, they were 3-4 yards per carry last year. That's not very good. You need to be better. Now, Hassan Haskins has been a 5 yard per carry guy, 5.5 yard per carry guy his entire career. His biggest problem, he's not the fastest guy, but even bigger problem is he would go weeks just getting 4 or 5 carries a game, like Jim Harbaugh would completely ignore him. Was Zach Charbonnet gone? I think Chris Evans is now finally gone.
Yes.
They will now focus more on Haskins and have no choice but to give him the ball. He's better when he gets 20 carries a game and is able to wear down a defense. So a lot of it is I like Michigan better because they'll be more focused on Hassan Haskins. Blake Corum, I know some people like him. He's a change of pace guy. He's fine, but I would expect Donovan Edwards to give them a good number 2 as well. So I like mainly just the focus that Hassan Haskins is going to have, that is going to be on him more than Noah Cain maybe getting 15 carries and then 10 other carries going to everybody else and maybe getting out of a groove. I think Haskins will have more opportunity than Cain, and that's why it ended up with that. But I did kind of go back and forth, and I was like, am I really doing this? Because I sure didn't plan on it, because when I was writing it down, Penn State was the second one I did, and then eventually I changed it just because of the lack of production from Penn State, even though they've got a bunch of numbers.
As you were talking about Hassan Haskins being really talented and not getting very many touches, somewhere Nico Collins shuddered. Somewhere in America, Nico Collins just went, I just got real cold for something, and I don't know why. One thing that's interesting about these is you're ranking the quarterbacks, and you look at their production. It's like, well, if you put Michigan's quarterbacks with Ohio State's wide receivers, Michigan's quarterbacks are probably producing more, or Penn State's quarterbacks are probably producing more than they are. The running backs. Yeah, the Penn State running backs were averaging 3 yards per carry, but they weren't running behind a particularly great offensive line last year. I mean, there's a lot of interchangeable parts here that makes this probably a little bit of a trickier exercise than you might have thought. I know you have not published your list of Big Ten East wide receivers just yet. I'm guessing you have not even put your Big Ten list of Big Ten East wide receiver units together yet. I'm just going to go out on a limb. I'm going to speculate that I might know who might be number 1 in the Big Ten East in terms of wide receiver talent. Tony, is that a team that plays its home games in Columbus, Ohio?
Well, it could be. I haven't looked at the rest of the division. I don't know everything that Maryland has. I want to see what Rutgers has. Michigan, Ronnie Bell. You can't forget Ronnie Bell. And so they've got some guys. We'll see. I would expect, Chris Olave, he's pretty good. Garrett Wilson, pretty good. So, yeah, they'll probably be number 1. I don't want to put that in stone yet until I'm actually, I've done the research. I'm a pretty science-based person. I don't want a lot of opinion in this, so I'll need to watch the film, talk to coaches, that sort of thing.
All right. Well, we'll let you get back to the laboratory so you can get writing on that the next story in that series. But you can find that whole series at BuckeyeScoop.com. That is all free content. That is part of a lot of our stuff is free. It's outside the paywall. You can just find it on the front page of BuckeyeScoop.com. But of course, we put Tony's stuff out there. But the good stuff is behind the paywall. It is on our Ask the Insiders board. I'm kidding. Don't make that face. It is. We have our wonderful team of insiders: Bill Green, Kirk Barton, Mark Givler, Mick Walker, Alex Gleitman, Tony, Dominique, Ross Fulton, me. I think I've got everyone now. But there's a lot of us. So if I missed anyone, it's because there's a lot of us. So you can find us all on the Ask the Insiders board at BuckeyeScoop.com. It has been Nevada Buck. I didn't mention Nevada Buck. He's important too. Yes, he is. He has been very busy this week. A lot of interesting reporting from him on what's going on with JT Tuimoloau and all the other news that you want to know. That is all on our Ask the Insiders board at BuckeyeScoop.com. You just have to be a member to get access to that. And if you sign up before Sunday, July 4th, you get a chance to win Nevada Bucks tickets to the Oregon game. 4 tickets to the Oregon game. The get-in price is $500. The price for the tickets where Nevada has them is probably substantially higher than $500 a seat. So that might be a good investment to spend just invest in a month of Buckeye Scoop just for a chance to win those. And as a nice little side bonus, you also get access to our fantastic team of insiders, all of our great content, all of the insight and analysis you have come to know and love from Buckeye Scoop over the last year. Also, make sure you check out all of our great podcasts. They're on all the podcast platforms that you listen to. Just search Buckeye Scoop to find those. You can subscribe. You can also leave us a 5-star rating and review, which is something we do genuinely appreciate because it helps other folks find those shows. And finally, youtube.com/Buckeye Scoop. Go ahead and hit subscribe there. Just go to youtube.com/Buckeye Scoop, subscribe, and you will get notified every time we post a new video because we post a lot of podcasts. We post a lot of highlights. We've got Mark Givler out at the Elite F11 camp later this week. He's going to be covering Quinn Ewers, posting lots of videos of Quinn Ewers, interviews with Quinn Ewers, all sorts of fascinating stuff from out there, from a player you've heard a lot about and probably not seen a ton of. Mark will let you see a whole lot of Quinn Ewers this week. So just go to youtube.com/Buckeye Scoop and subscribe right there. And then you get notified every time Mark posts a new video, every time we post a new podcast. We will have lots of content from that. And, there's some recruiting stuff going on right now as well, as you may have heard. That is also probably going to be of interest to you as well. So make sure you subscribe on YouTube, leave us a rating review on our podcast platform of choice, and give us a subscription. Sign up at BuckeyeScoop.com today. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys for joining us. Have a great day. We will talk to you tomorrow.